Is the first special PS5 on the way? Deathloop is here, but it's not running too great. We've got some teases from Sony's new ad, and have the October PS Plus games already leaked. We've come a long way since the transition from the PS3 to the PS4, where people thought for some reason that console gaming was dying and that no one was gonna buy the PS4 and that it was just gonna all go away one day. Obviously, now that we're on the PS5 generation and we see how well the PS4 sold, spoiler alert, it sold really damn good, it's obvious that console gaming is going to keep growing and growing, and the PS5 is no exception. The NPD Group, which reports on game and hardware sales, is letting us know that the Nintendo Switch, while it took the crown last month, selling 50% more Nintendo Switches year over year for last year in August. That was the worst way to say that, but basically the Switch sold 50% better this year in August than it did last August. The PS5 also had an incredible month as well. Obviously we can't compare it to August 2020 because it came out in November 2020, but the sales are going so well that the PS5 still remains as the fastest selling PlayStation console, which is insane because we all know how hard these things are to make at this point in time. Now, even though the Switch beat out the PS5 and that's awesome for Nintendo, honestly, I feel like that comes down to the fact that the Switch is just more readily available. You've got the regular Switch, you've got the Switch Lite, you've got the Switch OLED coming down the pipe. I think you can even still get the non-Redbox Switch in certain special editions. There's a lot of ways you can just go out and buy a Switch, and there are also a ton of games on Switch. So yeah, if you want a casual gaming system and you're just looking at what's the easiest to get right now, the Nintendo Switch is the easy answer. But if you're a tried and true hardcore gamer like I think you probably are, you're probably just gonna wait until you can get a PS5, and they're basically selling these things as fast as they can make them. The whole point here is that consoles are doing just fine, which is good for us, because if consoles are selling, there's gonna be more games coming to them, and that's exactly what I wanna see. Make the wait for Wolverine shorter, guys. Come on, make more games that I wanna play. So a couple videos back, we talked about the 1.3 patch for Cyberpunk 2077 and how that's basically going to be the last big update for a little while, and how even though they've been promising and promising and promising this next gen update that's essentially going to be a relaunch of the game, it might get delayed until 2022. And one of the points I made is that every time one of these big patches come out, they usually introduce more bugs than they fix, and obviously 1.3 was no exception. So if you've been playing Cyberpunk 2077 and you've noticed more bugs on the game, you're gonna have a new patch to download, which is 1.31, which essentially goes back through and not only fixes bugs that were in the game before patch 1.3, but also fixes bugs that were introduced by patch 1.3. I do not understand how almost a year out this game is still so buggy. I'm one of the few people who got Fallout 76 at launch and played every patch after they started extensively reworking the game, and even that game had less bugs at this point in time than Cyberpunk did, and that game was a buggy mess at launch. I just don't understand it. Now, it's good that they're fixing bugs. I don't have a problem with that, but the issue is the more time that they spend fixing these bugs that should have never been in the game in the first place is time that they could also be spending fixing the core gameplay loop of the actual game, like fixing the loot system, fixing some of the armor mod systems, making it so you can't miss key items that you really need, like the best guns in the game. Some of them are locked off by just randomly making the wrong choice in a mission, and then if you don't have a save that you can go back to right before that mission, you're just locked out of having those weapons. There's all these little things that just pile on top of each other, and when you're already frustrated about those, one small bug can just be enough for you to close the game and delete it from your console. I mean, I know we just got the update that allows you to upgrade this SSD storage on your PS5, but you still have valuable space that's being taken up by a buggy game. That's the first thing I'm gonna delete, especially if I need space for a new game. So one of Microsoft's biggest exclusives of the year, Deathloop, is now out on the PS5, and I have been playing the ever-loving out of this game, and I love it. It is exactly what I've been hoping for, which is Dishonored mixed with the first-person shooter, and Arcane has totally knocked it out of the park, and it kind of justifies how bad Wolfenstein Youngblood was, because you can kind of tell that them helping out Machine Games with that game's level design got Machine Games to help them out with the shooting in Deathloop, because the shooting actually feels pretty damn good. But unfortunately, because this is an Arcane game running on the PlayStation ecosystem, it's got to have a ton of bugs at launch. I feel like that's just a feature for their their games at this point, and it's super frustrating. So one issue I've seen coming up on Twitter a lot is that one of the main characters in the game who's talking to you quite a bit, Juliana, sometimes her audio will just cut out, and the only way to fix it is to restart your PS5. The problem is, or just restart the game. The problem with that though is that there's a very roguelite element, like light roguelite element to this game, and when you're in Colt's safe room, that's where the save point picks up. So if you're halfway through a level and then you reset the game, you're gonna have to go back to Colt's safe room and kind of redo everything you just did, or you can just rely on subtitles, but the story is actually good in this game, so it's like, yeah, I wish they would just patch the game to make it so that the audio worked, or that they would have just figured this out before launch, because that's a pretty glaring issue to let slip by. Another big issue I've seen videos of is people are getting texture flickering off in the distance on rocks and stuff like that, and that can be super annoying when you're just walking through a big empty part of the level, because it's very apparent when a rock is just flickering in and out of existence. I hate stuff like that. It's super annoying, and it comes down to really variable refresh rate and dynamic resolution. I don't know how well that's going to be able to be fixed, but if they make the game run better with patches, hopefully that will stop the resolution from swinging wildly all over the place, or they can just isolate the issue and figure that out. But yeah, I hope they figure that one out pretty quick. And then on the PC, it's also having a ton of issues, because of course it is. There's stuttering, there's weird camera movement stuff. A lot of people think it comes down to the anti-cheat, which is called Denuvo, because that just ruined Resident Evil 8. But Alex over at Digital Foundry is saying that he hasn't actually found any evidence of this being an issue. It's mostly just coming down to how the camera is programmed, and how that relates to PS5 is that the camera works the same way. So you might even see some of the stuttering over on the PS5, which is super frustrating because this is one of the best reviewed games of the year. Like, this game is getting tons of 10s from the biggest review sites out there. Thankfully though, Arcane says they're looking into the issues, but man, is it frustrating that by the time Xbox players get this game, it's probably going to be all figured out, which sucks because this is a PS5 exclusive right now, and I want it to run well on the PS5. Guys, Deathloop is taking up all my time right now, and it's really hard to get motivated to make videos. So if you want me to keep making videos here, make sure you subscribe and set your notifications to all to pull me away from the amazing game that is Deathloop. I've talked extensively on this channel about all of the different PS3 emulators and how embarrassing it is for Sony that people at home can figure out how to get the PS3 running on their computer, but Sony can't get the PS3 running on their PS5. And now it looks like these people at home have figured out how to make an emulator for the PS4 that actually works pretty well. The emulator is called Spine, and just like with the PS3 emulator, it's basic right now, so it's going to require a lot of performance out of your PC, and the best way to make it work is to just play over 300 2D games instead of the more advanced 3D stuff like Bloodborne. I never really understood why emulators were so important, other than being able to play games for free on my phone in high school, until I started seeing stuff like the Mass Effect Legendary Edition coming out, and they don't have DLC because EA literally let the company who made the DLC delete the source files. You know, you see how bad these companies are at preserving their games and their legacies and stuff like that, and how little they care about making sure their old games are playable on newer consoles, that it makes sense why people are so invested into getting these emulators running at home. Now obviously it would be better for this emulator to be able to run stuff like Uncharted 4 or some of these bigger games, but that would basically mean that Sony has a really good reason to go ahead and shut this emulator down, because when you're running their biggest games on the PC for free, that's where you're going to start to run into issues with them. But if you're playing 2D stuff that's not really selling all that well to begin with and probably died out of the zeitgeist, they don't really have that much of an incentive to shut this bad boy down. Now obviously people are still going to work on it even if they get that cease and desist. That's why we're still seeing the PS3 emulator being worked on, and the Wii emulator and the Switch emulator that's out there that lets people run Breath of the Wild in 4K. But still, it's good that they're just starting small, getting it running on PCs, and I'm glad it's working for people, because it's cool to know that there's an emulator out there if Sony ever decides to stop supporting PS4 games. One of the weirder moments from the PlayStation Showcase last week was the big trailer that started it. Everyone kind of thought it was an ad for a specific game, but then it just turned out to be an ad for the PlayStation ecosystem as a whole. But I really love these ads that Sony does, because they always hide Easter eggs from games from their past and sometimes games from the future. And when we combine some of the stuff that showed up in this trailer with this big NVIDIA GeForce leak that happened last week, it's easy to see which of those games are even more real than we thought they were. So the big one we got to talk about first, obviously because I'm a horror fan, is Resident Evil 4, because there's a Los Illuminados symbol on a wall in this trailer, and we all know that the Resident Evil 4 remake was not entirely confirmed by Capcom, but they said, yeah, we're looking into it, and it it leaked a bunch. And then of course this NVIDIA leak mentioned the Resident Evil 4 remake. And now we've got this Sony trailer teasing Resident Evil 4. So I feel like that means that, yeah, they are going to finally remake Resident Evil 4. I play Resident Evil 4 pretty much every year around Halloween, and I'm of the mind that it still holds up very well. I know that some people really don't like the controls where you have to stop and aim. You can't like move when you're aiming, but to me, that's what makes the game so scary. You gotta aim right, and you've got the laser just like moving in and out like a little circle on the screen because Leon's tensing up because there's a guy walking towards him. That's what makes the gameplay cool. And if you really go out of your way to learn how the controls work, it's kind of like riding a bike, especially if you go back every year like I do to play it. But when I look at how good the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes turned out, I'm like, man, I would really love to see what they can do with Resident Evil 4. Like, give me that updated Leon who's more of a badass, make him feel a little bit more realistic, and it doesn't really bother me because I can always go back and still play the original Resident Evil 4 because I'm sure they'll make it a little more streamlined and a little less campy towards the end of the game. Another game that showed up is Sly Cooper, and that actually makes sense because we know Sony's had a Sly Cooper movie or show in the works for a long time now. We also know that they have this One Sony initiative where they want to have games coming out alongside movies. So if that Sly Cooper movie or show that's been gestating forever is finally going to start coming out, they'll probably want to have a game to come out along with it. And I think Sly Cooper 4, when that came out, actually sold pretty decent. So seeing a new Sly Cooper game just kind of makes sense. I don't think Sucker Punch is going to make it though. They're a little bit busy with Ghost of Tsushima 2. There was also a tease for Helldivers in the trailer, which is an obscure PlayStation game that's a ton of fun. It's basically like a top-down shooter, but it's one of the hardest top-down shooters I've ever played, and it's hilarious because you have friendly fire on, so you can blow up your friends. It's very easy to die. It's kind of like a roguelite, but not really. It's just very hardcore and a ton of fun. But the reason it's interesting it showed up in this PlayStation ad is that Helldivers 2 was one of the leaked games from that NVIDIA site, so I feel like that's confirmation once again that that big NVIDIA leak was real. And then finally, we have a reference to Silent Hill 2, which is a radio sitting on a desk. Now this one I'm a little bit wishy-washy on. I'm not entirely sure if that is the radio from Silent Hill 2, but I want to believe that there's more Silent Hill coming. We don't know what's going on with Abandoned. Obviously, I still think that's probably something related to Silent Hill and Hideo Kojima, but we do know that Bloober Team is working on a game in the Silent Hill universe. So now is probably a good time to start teasing it for Sony. And last but not least, we have the rough outline of a Castlevania sprite at 32 seconds in the trailer, and that's cool because we know that the Castlevania Advanced Collection leaked from Konami, and they have not said anything about it, but October's coming up, Halloween time's coming up, we've got a new Castlevania show coming down the pipeline. Like, now is the time, Konami, please release the Castlevania Advanced Collection. I used to play those games all the time, and I really want to play them on my TV in full remastered quality. Just give me what I want here. We know you're making it. It got rated by the ESRB. We know it's coming. Just release it. The Game Boy Advance games, they're gonna run fine on the PS5. Well, I just checked the calendar on my watch here, and we're about halfway through September, which means we're right about at the time where the October PS Plus games are starting to leak. And this month, it's looking like we're gonna get something pretty cool. So over on PC for a while now in early access, there was this game called Hell Let Loose, which is essentially, the best way I think I can describe it is Battlefield, but made by indie developers, and it is very scary. Like, the sound effects in this game are absolutely nuts. The maps are huge. It's a World War II shooter that feels really good to play, and now it's finally coming out of early access, and it's coming to both PS5 and Xbox One. And even though these leaks are usually spot on, this is still kind of a conspiracy theory, but it makes sense. Just stick with me here. So Hell Let Loose comes out on October 5th this year, and the 5th day of the month is usually around when the PS Plus games go up. And if you go over on the Xbox Series X or the Xbox Store on your Series S, you can pre-order Hell Let Loose, but on your PS5, if you go to Hell Let Loose on the PlayStation Store, it just says coming soon. So when you take the coming soon part, you combine it with the fact that this game comes out on October 5th, I'd say the odds are pretty damn good that this is going to show up as a PS Plus game, because, you know, having a new multiplayer game, a first-person shooter available for free with your PS Plus subscription, that's the bread and butter that Sony needs right now. Actually, they don't really need it. I don't want to pretend that PS Plus has been bad, because it's been probably one of the best years for PS Plus we've ever had. It's actually pretty damn good. So yeah, I think this game makes sense. I'll keep an eye on it, and I'll be sure to let you know when the rest of the games leak, like they inevitably will, because it happens every single month. Guys, some big things are happening over in the PlayStation hardware world. First up, a few months ago, we got the black DualSense controller, and now next month, we're getting the black Pulse 3D wireless headset, and that's cool. I like that. I love how black looks on that headset. I love how black looks on that controller, but you guys know where I really really want the black to show up, and that is on the PS5 itself. Now, I actually got kind of tired of complaining about how bad the PS5 looks in white, so I got some dark plates, and yes, the PS5 in full black looks incredible, but the big issue with those dark plates is that because they're third party, you can't cut out the PS logo, and if you're one of those people who wants everything to look official, I feel like the only way you're really gonna get that PS logo cut out on some dark plates is if Sony wises up and starts selling them, because man, there's no reason not to. You could sell them for 50 bucks like D-Brand is, and people would probably buy them, right? Because people like me, we want our PS5 to look nice and sleek in our entertainment center, and there's no better way to do that than to put two black plates on the side. And also, if you take off the black plates, you're not gonna put white scratches all over your PS5's internal chassis, so that's even more important to me, personally. But yeah, going back to this Pulse 3D wireless headset, I feel like it's a no-brainer for Sony to release a black one, especially since they've got the black controller out there, and that kind of tells you which of the two controllers that they've released, the black and the red one, was selling better, because I feel like if the red one was selling better, we would have seen a red headset. But honestly, I kind of would want to get one of those because it would still probably leave the headband black, and I feel like the red cups with the black headband, that would just kind of go nice together and sort of feel like Miles Morales. And we know Spider-Man 2's coming, we know it's probably gonna have co-op where you get to play as Miles. That'd be a good time to release a black and red headset, you know what I'm saying? And before you go in the comments and tell me that I'm wrong for just guessing that the black one's selling better, guys, the red one's $5 more, and these things are expensive up front. I think people are probably gonna go to the store and say, man, I wanna save that $5 to spend on Basement Crawl on the PS4. That's a deep cut. One of the worst games ever made. Anyway, guys, that's all the PlayStation 5 news I have for you today. Make sure you let me know what you think of all of it down in the comments below. And remember to subscribe and set your notifications to all if you haven't already. As always, guys, my name is Jimmy Champagne, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.